Watch the ride.
I'm going to do a quick build today, and this is literally on the spur of the moment. This is something that's been in the back of my head for a little while. It was Reno's birthday yesterday. She's with her family today, so I've kind of got a free day. I've got a bike review booked for the end of the week, so I am good to do whatever. If you remember, I used to do the metalworks where I made clocks and sculptures and stuff out of old motorcycle parts, and people used to send those to me. There were times that I said, I have enough, please don't send any more, and they kept coming and coming, and I said, stop, I don't need more sprockets or anything like that, and they kept coming and coming. And it was fantastic, and I thank you, because it meant I always had the best ones to choose from. These that are left are not the best ones, but I haven't thrown them away because I always knew I wanted to do something with them. And I now have a reason to build something with them. I need a burner for the garden. So I've got a box full of sprockets, which are all greasy and I'm not cleaning them. I will grind off the bits that I'm going to weld. There's no point because they're going to get burnt. I have an angle grinder and I have a stick welder. I have this piece of wood that was in the garage and it just so happens to be the exact same size as a paving slab because I have a paving slab in the garden this is going to go on. And I'm basically going to just build a basket out of sprockets. Sound like fun? I'm going to try and do this in a more fast build way rather than the long drawn out things that you may have seen before. As the rest of this video is going to be a time lapse, I thought, why don't I just do a voiceover and chat with you about, about this? And it's really cool actually, because if you think about it, as I say, this was given to me, all the parts, by viewers of this channel. So think of the stories and the connections of people that have been joined together by this channel that are now joined together by bad welds. As I say, I did not clean this properly. I'm not worried about this, like, structurally or anything like that. It's not coming apart. It's properly welded together, which is why I've used stick. And I did grind parts, and there's plenty of parts in this where only a weld took one side, and then the other side, then I had to join those welds and then fill the welds. But as long as you keep chucking more and more stick in there, it's going to stick eventually. This is, as I say, this is fun building like this, because you don't worry about all the prep and is this actually going to hold. You can also see my sort of process of building something like this is completely on the fly. I've got no real plan to it. I was thinking about making like a ball out of them to make like a basket, but then I realised I'd only have one sprocket on the bottom, or if I did three then it would be huge and it would be difficult to make a ball. And then I also have to bolt it down and etc, etc. And then I was like, well, why not just make a basket which is basically square and fits onto that paving slab. Sheer luck I had that piece of wood that fitted. So you can see I've built the base with the four, and now I'm getting pairs of sprockets which are as close as I can get in size to weld together. Let's have a look, see what I'm doing here. Oh, look at that, using all the stick I can. These are from Aldi, I think, these sticks. They seem to work alright. They're a bit thin. I could probably done with a bit more material being chucked in for something like this. Yep. Grind. Front and back. As long as the weld's in there, it's going to hold. There is a point in this later on which I'll point out that I missed filming because the battery died, where I added in 4 extra sprockets for structural rigidity and also holding in sort of, stuff that's burning in the basket. Talking about burning in the basket, we did try this yesterday, and I'll show you at the end of the video, as I say, the final product. It does work great. Yes, everything falls out the bottom if you're using really small stuff, but if you're using logs, it just falls, the embers fall through onto the concrete slab underneath, and they just basically get blown away eventually. I wouldn't imagine, sorry, correction. I don't think it would be a great idea using this on a really, really windy day, but a nice evening, it's fine. It may burn the edges of the grass around there, not really bothered. If it does become a problem, maybe I'll put some pebbles around it so it's a permanent place. I mean, the paving slab's there anyway. Right, so where are we up to? We're now, I've made all my side pieces, and now I'm trying to work out which way I'm going to do this. Am I going to do it straight? Am I going to do it at an angle? If I am going to, part of this is, what it's going to end up being is what was easier to weld and reproduce. And it was at this point I realised, I can just do it at an angle like this, which is good for a basket, and then I can get a set angle using an angle gauge to just roughly get it about right. See, roughly. And then have some earthing problems. I had lots of earthing problems because of this, because you're not cleaning the metal up properly, etc, etc. You're not getting good earth. End up giving up and just giving a quick buzz with the angle grinder. Stick's probably my favourite type of welding. I can do MIG and TIG. MIG and TIG. Really, TIG is like the best. I love it. It is the absolute pinnacle of welding for me. But if you're just slapping something together, I love using stick. I know MIG's just as good for doing that, but there's just something about the simplicity of sticks, just sticks. It's like, it's as close to a hot glue gun as you're going to get from a welder, really, because you're just melting sticks into it. So, yeah. Being really careful to make sure everything's in line on something that couldn't possibly all be in line because nothing's the same size pretty much. But hey, we're trying. As you can see, I've got a lot of sprockets left. They're all quite small though, so I'm going to have to think about what I'm going to build out of those. I want to use them. As I say, I think it's really cool that these are all sent to me by viewers, and by building this and the other things out of it, it's like a reminder of, oh yeah, don't ignore that. This is where basically you get a good weld onto one side, you get a good weld onto the other side, but it will not join. It's probably because of all the contaminants and stuff in there. So all you do is just grind it back, use those blobs of good weld to then join up and then fill around it. And yeah, Bob's your uncle, it sticks. Eventually. More earthing problems. Positioning, more positioning. Really doesn't matter. Why are you checking this much? Also, if you wonder where I became floor gang, I don't have a worktop tall enough that would have made that. I mean, if you had a proper worktop, this would be much easier probably. But hey, this works. Floor gang. Stick welding on the floor? Seems pretty legitimate. Hurt my back doing it? Definitely legitimate. So yeah, weldy. The whole process of welding is just so cool. And it's not expensive to do. Like, the welder I'm using here is less than 200 quid. It's a TIG welder and a arc welder, MIG welder. Not MIG welder, sorry. MMA. I think that's what's written on it. And the sticks are super cheap. So, I mean, if you use stick welding, you don't need gas or anything like that. So you don't need the contracts and a rented bottle and yada yada. And it's a lot more kind of forgiving. Don't go and weld someone's car if you don't know what you're doing. Like, as I say, this is for stuff that's just fun welding. Doesn't matter if it's not suspended above people's heads, not holding weight, not, you know, nothing like that. If the welds go on this, what's the worst case scenario? The fire falls out of it a bit. Alright, not ideal, but it's not going to be that huge a fire. And already the fire's getting out of it because of all the holes. You will notice the bottom's got a lot of holes in it, big holes, and I realised that was a problem which I got to later on. Drum solo using some sort of exhaust baffle that someone sent me at some point. Never found a way to use that, unfortunately. Welded. Now, I'm being careful because I've only welded them from one side. I am going to flip this, clean it, and weld the hell out of it from the other side. So it's, you know, as I say, you only need a bit of weld and it's going to hold. Probably throw this off a mountain, to be fair, and instead get... Adjustments. Yeah, as you can see, a lot of grease, a lot of oil, contaminants. But what's going to be cool about this, obviously, is as it gets burnt off in the fires, all that grease, this will end up rusting. It's going to be bright orange. I know that, and that's part of the plan. It should look really cool when it's like that. More cleaning, more tapping. Stick welding, if you don't know, basically it has a flux which hardens over the top of the weld, so you don't actually see the weld. You're seeing a load of flux splatter. And then you smack that off when it's cooled down a bit to re-weld onto it. You see? Strengthening. Just adding extra. You can see where I'm working fingers there between the each tooth and then filling the gap from the other side, so you've got a big chunk of metal in there. Bit of a clean up. You can see all that sort of gravelly looking stuff that's flying everywhere. That's the flux from the sticks. It was an absolute... Actually, that is one thing about stick welding. It is really messy. It's much better to do it outdoors if you can. Right, this is where I'm trying to work out how I'm going to fill these holes, and you can literally see my brain process going here. Like, I want to try and fill the holes with still having a reasonable aesthetic. And as you can see here, I'm not really finding a solution that I like. So Oh, and you can also hear, sorry, this is the point that those corner sprockets have been welded in. You can see in each corner, they now join the sides, so we've now got a continuous band of strength. Now I'm thinking about feet, and I was thinking maybe if I put these here, I can make like feet that also block the holes. See, trying all options, thinking about everything. But remember, I only want to spend a couple of hours on this. I didn't want to spend a lot of time. And then you'll see, kind of like this. Kind of like it if it matched though, and that's where I start going hunting. You see, it doesn't matter, but you can't help yourself. Oh, at this point I was considering doing stacked sprockets for feet, and then I realised I was just going to end up making these tubes that wouldn't be great necessarily. And it would also make it a lot heavier. And I think, I think I've made my decision as to what I'm doing now. Switching to a flap disc, just to actually get through the metal a bit. If I'd gone over this with a flap disc afterwards just to shine everything up, it would have looked crazy, like just in the sun it would look amazing, but it wouldn't last more than 5 minutes, so it doesn't matter. Leave it, let it rust, and the welding begins. Oh yeah, you can see, right, so I'm welding in these other sprockets in the middle to reduce the size of those holes. That was bright. These weren't taking great in places. This was, again, you can see in that bottom left one there, there's two good blobs of weld, they're just not connected. But they can be, eventually. More welding. Tappy tappy. You have to get the flux off before you start welding back through it, otherwise you'll just end up with problems. Also, I'm in hitting it, I'm listening for when it goes from tinging to tonking. Basically, the more connected a piece of metal is together. If you get two pieces of metal that aren't properly welded and you hit them, you'll hear like a ting. Well, not a ting, sorry, you'll hear like a tonk as it's like a plate with a crack in it. Once it's joined properly and it's one piece of metal, then it reverberates through the entire length of it. So in tapping it, you can actually hear where it's not welded properly. This is on the underside, so just shove it in. Sticks are cheap. More sticks. If you enjoy this video, please do hit the like button. I would really appreciate it. And if you want to help support this channel, consider doing that through Patreon. If you don't know, I used to do a thing called the Metalworks, where I basically turned, I did mention at the beginning of this, I turned sprockets and brake discs into clocks, and sculptures used R1 gearboxes turn into like really nice, like carriage clock looking things. It was really good. The only reason I had to stop was because the money wasn't there. It was all like before COVID, everything started going downhill, and from that point onwards it got worse and worse. Oh, I think we're getting towards the end. Right. Well then I guess what I need to do now is show you it live. Now, it's raining outside, unfortunately. Here you go. This is the basket. As you can see, I have had a small fire in it. It's worked perfectly. I've got it up on these little concrete corner bits. They're actually another pavement slab that was broken up, so it fits in perfectly. And yeah, it worked absolutely fantastic. Plenty of air gets through it and around it, so it burns stuff out. If you do put paper in it to start out, it's going to end up sending paper everywhere, as I've discovered. I've got a load of logs from where we had to chop a tree down that have been drying out of the elements for a couple of years now, so they should be about right to burn soon. So what I'll do when I actually want to use it in the summer is I'll put kindling in the bottom, put some larger logs on top, get a good little fire going, and then just let the big logs just kick out some heat while we're sat out there having a barbecue in the evening. Maybe it'll keep mosquitoes away a bit, who knows. As a biker, I really like it, and as a creator, knowing that all these sprockets were given to me by the viewers of this channel and then I've welded them together is kind of like a good metaphor for what this channel is about. Bringing people together and forming bonds. As this thing rusts over time, I'll post some pictures on social media, so give it a year or two and the whole thing will be bright orange and look crazy, I reckon. Anyway, thanks for watching.